Lesson 4 for Unit 1 for the Home Study course, and Awaken Your Inner Genius. And we're thrilled to have you again with us this week. It has been a whirlwind of a week, lots of busyness these days. We have a wonderful panel with us here today. You're becoming friends with our panel, but we have John Bonzel, the former president of the University of Science and Philosophy. We have Jim Porter and Jackie Porter. Jim has also worked at their lifetime Russell students, also worked at the Russell Museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. And John is a 50-year student, and we have Ken, a 30-year student, based out of LA and here with us in Virginia. So as you're all, if you would, drop in the chat box, please. Let us know where you're dialing in from. We'd like to know where our viewers are. Before we begin, we would like to slow us all down. I've spent the full day in the airport today, and with travel problems, we've all had different things. I'm going to ask us all just to close our eyes and just recalibrate here to this moment, and just take you through a quick moment to quiet you down. And so as you tune into the music, please, if you'll just come centered here, allowing tonight to be a gift for you.
Level down.
Tap in to the universal heartbeat. Feel the light and the relaxation go through your entire body. Know that there are no accidents. Take complete solace in knowing that your divinity within is coming to the forefront in your awareness. Relax and just drink in the gift that's coming forth for us all this evening. Get centered. Understand the gift of the breath that ties into that universal heartbeat, listening to the music. On the count of 3, you'll begin to find your way. So open your eyes. 1, bringing the peace with you. 2, allowing love to flow forth this channel here this evening. 3. All right, welcome everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much to James. Here we have a wonderful program here tonight and a wonderful conversation. I have to tell you, I was really so touched when I revisited Lesson 4 for Unit 1 because it's rich, just rich with so much wisdom. Don't you think, John?
Yes. You know, if we didn't do anything but study Unit 1, we could probably carry that on probably for 6 months or more.
We could. That's exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking about the challenge of we have an ambitious goal to try to go through 1 unit per month, because that is the way that the Russells actually, that's the goal. And so before we get started with our very first page, Jim, why was it set up for the fact that it's 12 units per year, 1 unit per month?
So that it would be a study course that you could repeat. At the end of each year, as you finish each unit, the 12 units, you can begin again and repeat. They also, and they pointed out in this particular lesson that we're about to start, that as you finish each lesson, take the time to stop, rest, and go back and repeat that lesson. So it's repetition, like in anything. When you want to master anything, you master it through repetition and desire.
Well, and I find that it gets deeper each time. And so even as I watch Ken prepare for each week, Ken, even though you've been studying this 30 years, you seem to go a level deeper each time you refer to it.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate you calling me on that. And I actually wanted to ask Jim and John, and I think I've stated this before, but we're starting in meditation. That's in the first unit, is the scientific explanation, the application of it, how to go about doing it, what's the ultimate state to reach. Doesn't that seem a cart ahead of the horse? Or is that what leads us through the rest of the program for those people that might be wondering, why are we starting with meditation? It seems like it's going to take forever for me to learn how to meditate.
Are you asking that as a question, Ken?
Yes, I am.
Well, I'll give a shot, and then Jim, you can jump in there. But here's what we're doing. You are divine when you know you're divine, and so you have to know the process and the how and the why to communicate with your divine self. So until you do that, you're just, you're just floating out there. You're drifting in the dark. So this is brilliant what the Russells did. So they're teaching you up front how to communicate with your creator, and let it be a two-way communication, not a one-way communication. And that's what meditation and prayer does.
All right, Jim, you want to add to that? And then I'm going to have a start with a question that we received from last week before we dive into this lesson 4.
Okay, I can definitely add to and expand it a bit. The simplification for me when I was coming into the Russell course, as I remembered these 2 statements from my childhood and my church going in Bible reading. In the beginning, God. When you seek the divine within through meditation, you're putting God in the beginning. It also says in the Bible, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all things else will follow. So you see that the importance of seeking communion with the divine before mastering or going forth to master the physical. That's why the philosophy precedes the science. The science teaches you how to master the manifestation through the physical. The philosophy teaches you how to do it through love.
Okay. All right. So we're going to I want to show you all that we do listen to your questions. And so we're so grateful to have 150 followers here on YouTube. Thrilled about that. And we are honored to have you on this journey with us, because the home study course is meant to be exactly that, a home study course. This is our effort to simply go along the journey with you here. We're going to go into lesson 4, but we did have a question from the last session that we'd like to take just a quick moment to answer. And so James will bring that up, and Jim was going to answer the question. What is the question here, Jim?
Can you read it?
Oh,
It says, what is the biggest difference between Walter's periodic table and Mendeleev? I'm not sure I'm getting the difference. Any nudges in the right direction would be great. Just trying to understand.
Sorry, go ahead. The Mendeleev chart on the left is incomplete. Mendeleev believed it to be complete because he believed the first element in existence was hydrogen. And he registered it as the first, and everything else came after hydrogen. That is why science looks at the universe and perceives a big bang, hydrogen exploding outward and creating all things that follow. And they see the universe as dying, is expanding into nothingness. The mystic, Dr. Russell in this case, knows that there are elements preceding hydrogen that are called base octaves. That's your chart on the right. There are 21 elements preceding hydrogen and 3 others that Dr. Russell gave that Mendeleev did not give in his chart. So it's not a condemnation of Mendeleev, it's a completion of the chart so that you can know that the scene, that which science can register as elements, is the expanding side, the regive side of nature, the multiplying side of nature, the mother dominant side of nature. The inwinding on scene is the father side of nature, the penetration of the dominant masculine into embodiment. It is the beginning of the interchange between masculine and feminine to manifest divinity. That's what both charts. One shows you half of that, the other shows you in complete.
Well, and I thought, so we're going to go a lot deeper into that later on in the home study course. But one thing I actually read about Mendeleev a long time ago was the fact that he actually received insight almost as if it was an illumination himself. And you'll hear that from some scientists that will say that. And John, I find it fascinating. And Ken, I'm going to have you start us off on the top of page 41 in just a moment. John, I find it fascinating that the Russell work actually gives scientists, people from all walks of life, some kind of understanding as what does it mean when we receive those flashes of inspiration.
Well, thank God that there's people that listen to it. Some people get it and just ignore it, and it just comes and goes, and it just becomes fleeting. But those that are in tune to themselves, to their higher selves, they listen, and they thank God they bring it to into existence.
I love that. And Jim, I love the way you said that. It's not that it was a damnation, it was an expansion of. And I think that's really important, because I think in this time in humanity, we are going through an expansion. So before I hand it over to Ken, I just want to say hello to our viewers. Hello, Linda. Hello, Karen. Hello, Zeus. Bonnie, thrilled to have you. Hello, Dee. And we also have Bruno, always glad to see you chime in. And we're going to keep up with you here in the chat box. So let's dive in, Ken. Let's go ahead and start, and James will bring it up. The very first underlined sentences in this lesson, because it's so incredibly powerful.
I'm sorry, you said 41 or 42?
The top of page 41, we'll pull it up here. The very first sentence of the whole unit. James will scroll down. Go ahead, James. Right. Go ahead, Ken. We'll catch up.
Okay, yeah, but where do you want to start? Meditation, or it has been said?
The very first, the thing I have highlighted, the very first underline.
Okay, now I can see it. Yes. Okay, meditation is the key that will open the door to your inner self. Note bigger self, not little self. That's the big S. So that's your highest self, wherein lies all the true power for material manifestation. For as sound springs from silence, so does positive action come from inner knowing. God, that's so powerful. And the reason I asked the question is not because I wanted to know from Jim and from John and whoever would be able to give good insight as to why they started out the meditation. But I also know that the reason is because I cannot read this without a power greater than any human power, like John was saying, and understand it. So even from here, it's telling me silence comes from sound. Think about that for a second. Sound is not born. It's born from silence. So the only thing that's consistent is silence, not sound. Sound is temporary. So that's temporary, and therefore it's not real. Now, when it says, so does positive action come from inner knowing, what I refer to that is when I get a concept for a screenplay, or I get a concept for a new movement, or a new idea for my business, or I get an insight about my own life. It's an inner knowing. And with that inner knowing comes a frequency I call, and the Russells refer to as ecstasy. Ecstasy is not a word to be scared of. It means exceedingly content and fulfilled. So when you come from your inner knowing, there's a passion, and what my friend John Bonds always talks about, and so does Mr. Porter and everybody else, it's about putting love into whatever you do. That comes from the inner knowing. You cannot fake love. You cannot fakely paint with love, create with love, talk with love. You can wear a face, but it's not authentic. And therefore, the light always knows the light. When you come from that inner knowing, it has a sense of ecstasy with it, a bounce. So I think we've all experienced moments where you saw a perfect sunset. That's your inner knowing connecting to that beauty within that sunset. Because I always say, when you think of any sunset that you might have seen, point to where the beauty is in that sunset. And you can't point to where it is. You just know the beauty is in the sunset.
That is so beautifully said. And so for those of you that are seasoned students and you already have a copy of your home study course, I'd really like you to circle that meditation is the key. And think about the fact that meditation is the key that unlocks your heart so you go within, that you're hearing Jim and John and Jackie talking about here, and make a note of that. There's so much wisdom in each part of this lesson. So I'm going to move us over here to page 42. And Jim, I'm going to have James pull this up. And in the second paragraph, there is a line, and it says this on page 42, second paragraph. It's highlighted right there. And if you would read that line, it says you must either desire, and then if you'll read it and talk just a moment about it, please.
You must either desire to live in the sensed body of earth or in the light of the mind, kingdom of heaven. Is that all you wanted me to read, just that statement?
What does that mean, Jim?
Well, we're always choosing. The sensual needs and desires of the body are not bad or evil when they are balanced with the thoughts and understanding that you are also a heavenly being. You are a heavenly being that has descended from heaven into embodiment. So as long as you are able to keep that body desires in balance and not let them overwhelm or direct you, you are walking with divinity to the degree that you know you are. It's that simple.
Okay, so let's keep going down the line because there's a couple of other things. And John, I'm going to ask you to tune into this notion of desire. So keep going, James.
Can I have James finish that paragraph? Because I think it's so much said there to people that might be struggling with meditation. James, you want to finish that paragraph? I'm sorry.
James or Jim?
Jim.
James,
sorry.
A lot of J's on the channel.
That is the answer to those who say they try to meditate, but find that they cannot stop thinking to get into that state of mind. To those who are thus troubled in making the transition, we would say that if you desired to talk to the President of the United States, your mind would be centered on the reason why you desire to talk to him.
Can I say something to that? Just one quick thing. That's where the ecstasy comes from for me in meditation. When I meditate, right? If I desire to speak to the President of the United States, there's something on my mind. When I meditate, my desire is to reach that state of ecstasy, of inner knowing, of out of body, of forgetting the body, sort of like a daydream state, and entering into that state of knowing. So for me, I focus on knowing that the state of God's mind is a perpetual state of ecstasy. When I'm in proper meditation, I have a smile. I'm sure I'm in physical form, but I feel the smile from the inside out.
Yes, and the next sentence explains that beautifully. Exactly the same procedure takes place when you wish to talk with God. We want to make it difficult. We want to look at God as unapproachable. We want to believe that it's outside of ourselves, that it's difficult. And it's not. It's as easy as having a conversation with the person across the table from you. Although most people find it's more comfortable talking with the divine within wordlessly through knowing. But if you need words, use them. If you find yourself drifting away from your focus on that divine within, don't get upset with yourself. That's the normal state of being. Have you ever watched a child learning to walk? I watched two learning to walk. At first, they stumble a lot, but neither of my children learning to walk when they stumbled grew angry or upset. They simply went back to seeking the ability to walk, and they accomplished it. We need to do the same thing when seeking the divine within. If you find that you believe you're not in communion with the divine, I assure you, the divine is always in communion with you. If you feel separateness, if you feel division, if you feel divided from that divine within you, that is you manifesting a feeling. It's not something to be hated. It's not something to be angry with. It's something to learn and understand that you will become better and better at holding the joy and ecstasy and oneness with Creator as time goes on. And in the interim, when you stumble learning to make that walk, don't be upset with yourself. Get up and try again.
Now, Jackie, I'm just going to ask you to chime in, please, because as we go down towards the bottom of this page, you want to just comment on watching your two boys actually learn how to walk and how they simply kept going. And you've said the same thing before when it came to meditation, is that you just kept going until you found that still place.
You do, and it even says here that you cannot concentrate long in any case, not more than 5 to 10 minutes before the reaction of a decentration takes place. It's like you can start to meditate and have an idea that you're working on, and or an idea or a problem you want to solve. So you're concentrating on that, but as those thought words are moving in your head, you get into this space. I don't know if it's like alpha or theta state where all the answers are. So because you zeroed in on a question, you're gonna get that equal opposite reaction, which would be your answer. And as far as children walking, I just think they're very much connected to that divine very early.
Yes.
Like 3 or 4 years, and so their desires come forth as I'm going to walk. Well, why do I keep falling down? I'm going to get back up, because they see that final destination, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they just have to work hard to get there. Just like a plant has to work hard to burst through the soil and become a plant or a flower. It just keeps going, pushing. Without that push, even at birth, without that push at birth,
I love that, Jackie.
Story behind that, but
I love that, Jackie. And you know what? Also, with this particular sentence, if you'll notice the sentence after the green, so keep that screen up, James. The sentence after it says, "Gradually, the inspiration you ask for will come to you." Before you can realize it, you will find yourself stepping in and out of the body. So I wanted to refer to that. So in the chat box, I am actually listing a summer series that both Ken and I are speaking at this summer. If it doesn't come through, I'm going to ask James if he would end up posting it. But it is and the reason I bring this up is because literally it happened to me this week. I had a desire on my heart before I went to bed, just as I was thinking about August, and literally the inspiration came in the middle of the night. And so I got up for a solid hour. I could literally feel that connection almost stepping out of my body, and yet somehow being able to capture the ideas and bringing it in. And I literally told Ken the next day, wow, it actually all came through. And talk about just a powerful reminder of what happens when you ask for it and the fact that it will come to you. So Ken, I know that one of the things you liked about this particular lesson was the fact that it goes through 6 steps about how to meditate. And this starts over here on page 43. And before I ask John to go over the first step, I'd like to ask you to talk about that first paragraph on page 43, the first full paragraph, because it's really so poetic. And you'll see where I actually highlighted just a few things there on the screen. If you'll mention a little bit about that paragraph before I have John do the first step.
You want me to mention this? To meditate, then follow through. Is that where you want me to go through?
Mm-hmm.
Then follow through one step at a time, letting go, letting the ego of your material self, note little self, melt into big being, note big B, of your eternal self. I want to say something here, and what's so important. Jim said in the beginning, or John did, I'm not sure which one. Contemplation, I think Jim just said it. Closing the book when we get done, ordering your home study course, right? Getting your own home study course. We read a paragraph, we break it down, close the book, and remember this. Contemplation is the highest form of meditation. And that's what it means to decentrate, because I'm contemplating. I'm not thinking, I'm contemplating. A child contemplates. So contemplation is the highest form of meditation. And that's why through this course, you will be continually reminded. You just read to the end. Now go back to the beginning and read it again, because you didn't even get it the first time. Big B, little b, right? Big S, little s. And as I've stated on these podcasts, the quote that I've heard from Leo is, the most powerful knowledge in this home study course is in the space between the words. Mm-hmm. That's where contemplation is. It's in the space between the words.
All right. So if we'll go back up to that star section, James, I love that. I really do love that, Ken. And that was part of what I wanted us to start here. Before we go through the first step, I wanted to spotlight one of the Russell students. His name is Boniface, and we're going to share in the comment section a link to his YouTube channel. And he actually started a YouTube channel that just went straight to meditation. That's where he desires to spend his time on helping people understand cosmic meditation. And I told him I would share it with this particular group. And we wanted to start here with the steps of meditation. So be looking for that link, but I want to scroll down to the very first step. And John, I'm going to ask if you would. One of the big things about lessons 4 in every single unit is they answer Q&A. So can you comment on that before you go into what is that answer to the very first question?
Well, the good thing is that the Russells don't leave you hang. If you can't get it on your own, they at least guide you and give you the answer, so that at least you can take the answer, and then you can contemplate it, and then you can go within with it. And but the key here with this meditation, people have got to understand that mind, thought, God is in the silence, is in the stillness. And until you get to that stillness where all knowing is, you're not going to be able to get anything out. And so you have to realize, make that separation between you, your mind, and the body. And the Battle of Armageddon takes place every second of every day, right? Mind, body. Jim mentioned that earlier. Yep. So once you become aware that you are mind, that you are divine, you're not your body, you just manifest and demonstrate through it, that's a huge step for you. Then you can start communicating with God as if God was you.
All right.
You'll tend to find that out.
So John, their very first step they said then was desire to be in the light. And so we're going to put that up on the screen because I love the way they capitalize light. And we're bringing this up for new students and seasoned students because it's so easy to blow past this. So what does this first step mean before we go to step 2?
Well, light is the language of your creator. So if you don't know the language of light, how are you going to communicate? Right?
What John, what comes from the sun?
The sun is physical, Ken. It's a different light. Anything in the material universe is a division of mind, comes from mind. Okay? We're talking about God himself, God itself, mind itself. That's where everything starts, in that stillness. So until thinking begins, until desire for action begins, then that undivided light becomes divided. And that's the physical manifestation of the world. So you have to teach yourself to know the difference, to know the separation.
So you're saying the light that comes from the sun that most human beings refer to is reflective particles of motion. That's not the light that we're talking about desiring here, correct?
No, it is not. That's
the
physical. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Can you separate those two a little more for us?
Well, if you can see something, all right, it's divided light. If you can't see it, it's undivided. And we've had this discussion. Take a prism and shine sunlight through it, right? And you'll see the divided light spectrum. But God's light, his language of light, is undivided. You can't see it with your body. You have to go within. And that's what meditation does for you. It takes you to that point of stillness. And then what happens is the beauty of how God speaks to you in that language of light. It comes to you in small doses, can come to you in big doses, but you don't know it. But it will unfold within you. And then you'll have one of those aha moments. You go, wow, I didn't know that. Or wow, you just got something. And that's how it works. So don't mistake physical light for the undivided light, the language of mind.
Okay, so I want to ask you.
I just clarify one thing with John? So the light of God is unconditional and undivided, therefore it's ever present, correct? Like silence.
That is correct. Unchanging. Yes. Omnipresent. There's where your three omnis come in, Dan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So one thing I want to ask you then, John. So desire to be in the light. So this is really important because step one, I don't want to blow past these 6 steps because as someone, I found this incredibly helpful on my own personal journey, is desire to be in the light. So would you say that Walter Russell, when he painted The Might of Ages, was that his desire to be in the light? And that was a manifestation of something he saw in the light?
I think you got it backwards.
Okay, so help me out because so when he desires to be in the light, so please help us. I want to have James pull up that Might of Ages, which was one of Walter Russell's earlier works. Profoundly, this is all hand painted. It's stunning. It's huge. So when he desired to be in the light, can you just somehow? How does it then come down?
So obviously there was a motive behind Dr. Russell's thinking as to create this Might of Ages. He was trying to demonstrate, he was trying to bring a principle forward. So if you look at all the great minds that are present throughout history in this painting, and it takes a lot of work to try to figure out what these individuals might have looked like. So you go within, where all knowledge is, that ever was, is, or will be, it's already there. And Doc, having known and mastered the process of that, it was a piece of cake for him.
Okay,
and that's what artists do.
Who are some of the people that are inside this painting? Just out of curiosity.
Jim, you want to jump in here, buddy? I can point them out.
It's a variable, endless cascade of people throughout history. If you look at the upper level, the farthest top left-hand corner, you'll see the invisible members, recorded members of history on the steps that led to the first civilizations. You'll see the fellow there with the orange robe hanging over. That would, I believe, it's been a while since I've had it big enough in front of me, but I believe that is Nero. And then you come down and you see as humanity builds and sees civilizations collapse and rebuilds and sees civilizations collapse. Each step of the way, it evolves and becomes more in service to its fellow man than less. The ones that collapse have turned to not serving their fellow man, not loving their fellow man, not seeing themselves as one with their fellow man, and they collapse as a result of it. But the ones that rise from that collapse are brought there through the genius that are awakened in the new civilization and raise man to a higher understanding of love of his fellow man. And then that civilization flourishes until we become focused on the outward possession of things and power and lose sight of the value of loving our fellow man. And then we again collapse. That the whole course is written to humanity, warning us that if we do not awaken to the love and the truth and the presence of God within, we are about to experience another collapse.
I got one more question. Who's that gal right in the center there?
You talking about Joan?
Joan of Arc?
Joan of Arc?
Arc, man, Joan of Arc. Man, they're all in there, guys. Anybody who's watching this, look at this painting and just look at the faces and the detail. And if you know anything about history, I got 7th grade education, all right? George Washington. But you can start picking out people. And just like Jim said, this is so masterfully done that you would, in order to decode it, you'd have to sit there and study it and contemplate it for I don't know how long, and even
years.
No matter how long you did, there would still be more to see.
Yes.
And notice also that both the immortal genius is reflected there and the non-immortal selfishness in other leaders is reflected there. They are all present and part of the history of humanity. So we are not to turn away in disgust from the less than love. We are to understand what less than love manifests and instead give love to manifest its opposite. Don't hate, love.
Love that. Bonnie, actually, we have a comment here in the chat box, and it's really quite profound. She said, is the group shining their metaphysical light on God so that he reflects the light back to mankind? What a beautiful.
Well, we don't shine our light to God. Our light shines within the presence of God because we are the very God light that shines through us to the degree. Here's Russell. To the degree that we know we are.
All
Not
right.
think.
When
No.
two or more, Jim, I'm going to do a Bible quote. When two or more are gathered in my name, there is a power. So the answer would be yes.
Now,
God centers all bodies. That's the two or more. All bodies are divided in expression. That's the two or more.
Now we have a very, very big lesson to get through tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Jackie to take us down to step 2. So step 1 was to desire to be in the light. What is the second step there on page 44?
Your desire is written upon your heart. It is registered in your soul. It is no longer your body's desire. It is your soul's desire. You are in communion with God about it, not in words, but in light. You have an increasing sense of joyousness. Your desire is written into the universal heartbeat rhythmically. You are responding to it rhythmically. You are no longer just body. You are soul. Slightly aware of body.
All right. So that's quite profound, Jackie. When you talk about it, the desire written upon your heart. And I thought that was really powerful of saying you are soul. And I wanted to bring everyone's attention to soul being capitalized. What I believe has been so profound for me in this work, as I mentioned to you all, that I was a recovered Southern Baptist housewife, is that I appreciated how many other words in this home study course were capitalized. And none of that was an accident, was it, Jim?
No, it was to have you focus attention on it. Same thing with those that are underlined, is to have you slow down and focus your attention on that. Not that you might own it, but that it may become part of your soul. These are the things that they're trying to deliver beyond your senses and into the soul of you, because when it reaches the soul of you, it is yours forever. If it only reaches the divided brain of you, it's a recording that will not last. That's what meditation does. Meditation gives you the forever.
Okay, so Jim, why don't we go ahead? Why don't we, I'm going to have you go ahead on to the third step. But before we do, I want to invite all of our listeners, if you would, feel free to share anything about this broadcast so we can have more people join us here, even if it's just simply for people listening in, just to get a tune of a dose of inspiration for their day. So Jim, step 3, and then I'm going to go to Ken for step 4. What is step 3 when it comes to meditation?
You are in a contemplative mood. There is an indescribable peace in its rest. Your soul sees the beauty of the flower you are passing. It is not your eyes which see, nor that beauty, nor your ears which hear the silence from which the sounds of earth spring. You are in the rhythmic world of imagining, the world of inspiration, the world of the high heavens, the formless, indestructible world of the high heavens. Indescribable, pardon me. Thank you, Jackie. You become less and less aware of your body as you become more wholly mind. You dream rather than sense. And that is the journey that we're all on, all of us. Some, like the Russells, are a long way up the mountaintop to that enlightenment, and they can point the way for us. Some, like we students of the course, are learning a simpler way to walk the path. We are given the light and the direction of how and where to find that light of divinity that lights the path before us. This is done by masters. Every master that has ever existed and been recorded in history has walked the lower path and the lower paths that you have walked and are walking. And every one of them has achieved awareness of the divine within by their desire in exact accordance to their desire to know it. And every soul will reach that mountaintop of I and the Father are one. Every soul, no matter how many incarnations, every soul.
Can I ask you a question, Jim? Because there's that section right there where I have the yellow star. It says the world of imagining, the world of inspiration. And so really we have that as children. We have very vivid imaginations. We have lots of inspiration. And yet this world squashes it out of us.
It can, and that's okay. It's okay to fall victim to the sense world and to the commandments and demands that you have to see things as others sees them. We all do. But once you reach a certain stage of enlightenment, once you know how to recenter yourself, how to be that child that doesn't give up but gets up and tries again and again and again, then you have mastered all attempts within your body and from those outside of yourself to command your direction. You become master of your own destiny to the degree that you accept and know you are. And the only thing those that would seek to control you can do is either shut you up by imprisoning you or end you by killing your body. And your answer to them would be the same as Jesus' to the world. Tear down this temple. Go ahead. I will rebuild it. And we do. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, not to get even with the person that may have brought harm upon us,
Okay.
but to live the example of how they can become awakened to the light within them.
All right. So we've got 3 steps now. Ken is going to take us over here to the 4th step.
Little itty bitty one, I might add. I'm just kidding. Very powerful, very powerful, very powerful. You are in communion with God. I'm in communion with God. You are one with all things. I am one with all things. You know all things as one. I know all things, but you know the light which all things are. You know the love nature of God and all things. This is that ecstasy I was talking about. You know God as love, right? The perpetual state of ecstasy is the state of God's mind. I know myself, little self, as love. You know, in capitalization, the ecstasy of love. Here's that word ecstasy. You know yourself, myself, the mortal you has become the eternal you. John's described it so beautifully. If you can see yourself, you're not looking at God. When you can't see yourself, but you know you're there, now you're one with God. And that was well said. If you can sense it, then that is of the divided world. It's when you can't sense it, but you know it's there. And I'll give you a great description that I've used many times. Think about a tree, right? Your whole life, our whole lives. I picked, God told me this one day as I was walking around meditating. I see trees and bushes and flowers, and I'm learning to tune in with God and be in love with nature and tune in and fall in peace. And then all of a sudden it dawns on me, do you know that we only see half a tree? Mm-hmm. But I think I'm seeing the whole tree my whole life. Yet I know there's a whole root system below the ground. Yet did I know that it was equal in proportion to the system above the ground? So therefore the ground is the equator. That's God. And the top of the tree is giving life, and the bottom of the tree is feeding that life that is giving while it's absorbing our death. It's sort of like, you have to make an effort in everything you do. God is never going to do in my life, for me, that which I'm supposed to do first, but God will help me do that which I need to do first if I ask, if I desire that. Working with God be with me. I've been in many edit bays, long hours in edit bays. I did produce commercials. And so I did a lot of editing. And it would get tiring. You're in a bay, you're looking at TV screens. And I remember many affirmations with God just saying, I love my work. And I do. I love creating. I love the work that I do. And so I would always ask God to help me to remember that I love what I'm doing and to not let fatigue set in and bring mediocrity into that work which I was doing. So when you feel tired, ask God to recharge you, and you can actually revitalize your body. I found just by asking God. And that's what I get out of, that's what being the ecstasy of love is. When I was tired, I just asked God to be with me. I'm not so tired anymore. That's some magic. And if you can't fall in love with magic, I don't know what, you know what I mean? What are you going to fall in love with? The magic of light that like you said, you can know, but you can't see.
Well, and this is beautiful. And so I'm going to ask John. John's going to take us to step 5, and I do want to bring something up to everyone who's with us today. We are not going to be able to read the whole home study course to you. That is not our intent here. What we spent some time with these first 6 steps because it was so riveting, and then I'm going to move us more quickly through the rest of this particular lesson. And John, I'm just going to ask you to read the first comment, and then bring out whatever it is that you want to bring out, where it talks about here on page 45 under the 5th step of meditation.
Very good. That which you desired to know, you do know. That which you desired to have, you now have. You have always known and have always had that which you have, but now desired. You have always known it in the spirit of you, for you are the light of all knowing, which spirit is. So therefore, there's a nice little quote. You don't have to ask God for anything because he's already given you everything. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of these lessons. And then the Russell's trying to give you a structure as to how to remind yourself that you are the divine, and that which you desire to know, it's there, 24/7, nonstop. You just have to quiet yourself long enough to tap into it and make yourself re-aware of that which you've already known.
Love that, John. And I want to bring up something that Dee commented here. And Dee, thank you. Dee is a student who's been studying for a while. And she says, thank you for the summary of the steps. I see contemplation in a new light, capital L, good job, Dee, as a result of this conversation, even after reading the course many times. And that's truly what I found, Dee, as well, is that each time it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And so we felt, since this particular unit was about meditation, that it was worth going a little slower for this. And so, John, I wanted to ask you too, there's a sentence later on, James, if you'll scroll down to the highlighted part, he goes, it says, he gives you the seed, but you must unfold the seed. So could you please equate this in a practical application for the seed of just this idea, awaken your inner genius? So and then later on it says he gives you the tools, but you must use them. So can you make this very real for our listeners to how does it take? We got the seed of an idea, and then we together collectively unfolded the seed.
Well, I think Leo Russell wrote a book on that. It's called God Will Work With You, but Not For You. I mean, you have to do your part. For example, and if you want to keep it simple, if we want to take a seed of corn or a flower seed, you got to get off your butt. You got to acquire the seed. You got to condition the soil. You got to put the seed in there, and you got to water it, and you got to, manage and manicure the soil and keep watering it, because God's part is guaranteed. You don't have to worry about God's end. You just have to worry about your part. So you do your part, and God's going to do his part, and his is always guaranteed. And it's that simple. We don't need to overcomplicate it. So the seed of anything, it can be a thought for a book. It can be a construction process, project, or a simple entity of any kind. So it's that simple.
Okay. All right. So don't overcomplicate it. All right. So Jackie, if you would, I'm going to ask you to go to the 6th step. You don't have to read everything, but if you would just read the top and then comment on your understanding of it.
In meditation, you have stepped out of the material into the spiritual you. And actually, they're kind of one and the same. But when you, even as an example, when you're sleeping, you're really not aware of your body until you wake up. Something triggers something in your body, and you would wake up and become aware. But when you go into the dream state, that dream state is not your body. Your ideas that you think of in meditation are not your body. That one whole idea, all the idea pool is God, basically, all idea. So you bring out any idea you want to pick, as John was saying, if you want to be an architect or, anything, that you've got to do it. It's anybody can grab an idea and make it manifest. So it more or less asks the question, what are you going to do about it? And I think it's kind of funny in here that it says, have you the moral courage to use it, or are you still a weakling? Ooh.
No, that's tough language.
And
Very true. They don't mince words.
No, like
Jen, I
referring
wanted
to
to,
for the effects of your ills rather than remove their cause. And that's a whole subject on itself. Like, yeah, what are you going to do with that idea?
Okay.
Jen, I wanted to bring your. Oh, I'm sorry, Jackie.
Oh, go ahead, John.
I wanted to bring Ken's attention to the following statement. It says, you stepped out of the conditioned universe of divided and unbalanced things into the conditioned and undivided universe of balance, which controls unbalanced things. And that was your question earlier about the sun.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the answer. It's a complex answer, but I would encourage everyone who heard us talk about that to contemplate what John just read there in answering that question. Beautiful answer. Thank you, John.
Yes. And that's actually why I had it highlighted, because those are two very important concepts within the Russell work. You're even welcome to take a screenshot, a picture of this here, because get used to this idea of the universe of the divided and unbalanced and the unconditional and undivided universe of balance, because this is I think, a fundamental building block for the rest of the home study course. So I think that's incredibly important about it. So here, I'm going to keep us going here because we have 50 minutes left of the actual 40 minutes left of the actual broadcast. Although we did promise to stay on afterwards. We're going to summarize with a visual journey of Unit 1 again, so that you can begin to unfold each week a little bit more. Karen is actually busy building our visual journey for Unit 2, which we will start next week. But I want to go ahead and skip ahead here to page 46. And that goes back to what, if James will scroll down there a little bit, just a couple of things. Is God has illumined you with the knowledge you desire. Skip down to the next highlight. God is giving you what you have desired. But now comes the important question, what are you going to do about it? What they just talked about that earlier. Notice how often they use the word desire. Jim, can you just comment on the importance of that desire? And before we continue, after you answer, I'm going to ask James to show a clip right quick.
All desire exists eternally at source, at God, at stillness, at one, at balance, at love. All desire. It never leaves it, but an embodied expression of the idea of that desire can be manifested, and it's manifested in exact accordance to your desire to make it happen. The Russells refer to it as using your own two strong arms to manifest that which you want. You can sit around all day long contemplating your navel and wanting to be at one with source, and eventually you will be. But that source will tell you to manifest that which you desire. Dr. Russell actually struggled, and he makes it clear in his books. He struggled with those that only seek to be at one with source, and then once having achieved it, spend the rest of their life seeking to return to that state of oneness with source without manifesting the knowledge that they've been given. He did not speak highly of those people. He didn't say they shouldn't or would. He did not speak highly of.
And John certainly brings up and has taught me over the years is that desire is the greatest power in the universe. And so that's why I wanted us all to slow down. And even those of you, if you don't yet have your copy of the home study course, I really want you to write down that word desire. For those of you that have your home study course, start circling that word desire. It is a big theme, a big thread under all of this work. And so I know for Darcy, she talks about how she wrote a book about this issue of desire. What are you going to do about it is what she wrote. So she had a desire to actually birth that creation. Hello, Miss Lisa. Darcy, that's wonderful thought that you have there. And as we continue through, I'm going to ask Ken if he'll look at page 47. But before we go to page 47, I want to just bring something up here because we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that the Terrence Howard interview interview on the Joe Rogan show. And I want to ask James to show you a clip because it talks a little bit about Einstein. And I want to put this in perspective here. When we think about desire and we think about how Einstein's desire could have shifted had he listened to his own wisdom here, that video interview of Terrence Howard is now up to 10 million views. Take a look at this clip.
And what is this other gentleman's name again?
Walter Russell.
Walter Russell. Walter Russell's version of the periodic table. How is Walter Russell's version of the periodic table perceived by people who study this?
Well, now everyone wants to use it. If you can go to in my book, there's a picture of Einstein reading Walter Russell's second book, The Universal One. Because when Walter wrote this in 1926, he sent it out to 300 different universities and physicists. And one of the quotes that Einstein says on his deathbed, I should have spent more time reading Walter Russell's work.
All right, John, I'm going to ask you to respond to this clip here about what Einstein had to say. What do you clarify anything that Terrence said that needed to be fixed? And what is your response to this whole idea of Einstein should have spent more time with Russell's work?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people, a lot of scientists, other than Einstein, that could make that statement. I'll never forget when Jim and I were at the Palace and Leo expressing to us when this gentleman visited her wanting to buy the Universal One because it was out of print and saying that it was being Xeroxed and copies being sold for $5,000 a copy. And so that's when Leo knew that the world needed that book again. So there's so many views and opinions on the Universal One, but I haven't seen anybody write anything like it since.
Can you talk about the letter that Walter Russell wrote to Einstein?
Yes,
Yes,
there is a
many.
letter in the archives.
Yeah, more than one.
Russell writing to Einstein saying, look, I appreciate you implementing my principles, but it'd be nice if you credited me instead of taking the credit yourselves.
Good to have a sense of humor.
Yes.
So now
Doc didn't think it was funny. I can tell you that.
Well, I'm sure. But what's really interesting, I want to just kind of recalibrate where we all are here, is that we're at a very interesting time in humanity that people are now waking up. And so Darcy says when we get to part 12, she is several steps ahead of us. We can help Terrence understand what the black hole is. And I wanted to bring attention to the fact that Terrence, along with so many of all of us Russell students, still have so much to learn and so much depth to go into, which is actually part of why we inspired this particular Awaken Your Inner Genius. We focus on the man who tapped the secrets of the universe, that small book that's an on-ramp, and we focus on the home study course. But there's many, many other resources that you can find at philosophy.org, which is the website for the University of Science and Philosophy. But keeping us going, as we have 30 more minutes and just so much that we can cover. I mean, this unit is so rich. Ken, what do you want to bring up here on page 47? And Jim, I'm going to ask you to be looking ahead at page 48.
Yeah, I'm going to go right to the very first paragraph that's underlined. First paragraph to me is the indentation. God's creative process, which is right there in green. You've circled in green.
Okay.
God's creative process are our creative process. His creations are extensions of his knowing. So a tree is an extension of God's knowing, transformed into the desired form through action. Thus comes the tree. Our creations are also extensions of our knowing, transformed by action. In other words, I know a friend of mine is an artist. She paints, and she can appreciate, I'm sure, the light of ages that we just showed. But if you look at if Walter had not practiced that art of knowing and that extension of bringing that to his creation, so he had to see that image. And they say you see the image, as all great mystics have said and geniuses said, if you'd seen what I'd seen in my mind based on the music you just heard or the painting you just saw, you'd be blown away. That wave painting behind me, when you look at the original, the detail is it's almost like he had a microscope to paint the lines in it. It's unbelievable, but you have to see the detail to just tell you that that can only come from the source of knowing. So in other words, the beauty of what I realized there is that, so God created this whole vast universe, the ocean, right? All the life in it. And now I'm being told that I can create whatever I want, just like God has created whatever God's wanted in this universe. But I must select, like Jackie was saying, I must desire to go to the pool of all idea and then choose the idea of my desire. I'm a golfer. I remember, and one time I wanted to design a golf invention. So I went into meditation, and in meditation, the idea of how to create that invention came to me in a timeless flash. I saw it instantly. It took me 2 years to develop the first prototype that was sellable, but I saw it instantly. And that's, I believe, what we're hearing. Whatever God does, and Jim says this, and I just love it. This is so important. Whatever God can create, man can create. Man may not know how to create like God yet, but man one day will know how to create like God and push those elements to make gold out of lead. It can be done. It's already there. Walter Russell talked about it. You could easily make gold as you can make lead when you learn how to push the elements. And that's exactly what God does.
All right. So much wisdom here. And here's the thing is that I wanted to bring up something else here on page 47. James, if you could scroll down, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jim for page 48. There were two things that I wanted to bring up to you. If you'll scroll down here on page 47. Okay. All right. So go on up a little bit. So here's where it says there with a star. It says the yellow star. There's only one reason for failure to fulfill your greatest desire, just as there but one reason for filling it abundantly. We cannot fully explain and define this one reason so early in the unfolding of this new knowledge. And so I wanted to bring this up to everyone because this home study course is built for a year because it's pretty big. I mean, so if there's ever a moment when you say, wow, what we want you to do is just go back to your breath, and we want you to simply contemplate. You can go back and listen to these videos multiple times. This is your journey, and there's obviously a reason why you're on this journey. But so early in the unfolding of this new knowledge. So this is new for many in humanity. This is truly a gift, what you're experiencing here with this particular conversation that we're having here together, because you have almost 200 years of Russell student knowledge that you have here. So I just wanted to bring this up to us here, and it goes down to the bottom of that page talking about rhythmic balance interchange, which you'll see that in the blue circle right there. And I'm going to keep us going. So Jim, out of page 48, and then John, I'm going to you for page 49. What's important to know for page 48?
Well, the entire page.
Other than everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Other than knowing that you're on page 48?
Right.
That is
No, I went right to the no civilization can hold together until love becomes the basis of human nature. And that is so true. We are literally watching a division between our fellow man manifest. But we are also watching the awakening of so many people on this planet right now who understand that only love of our fellow man will save us. So that sentence is packed for me. But thank you, Kim.
Well, and I put a t-shirt icon there, Jim, because a little gift of my love. So Ken and I were with a t-shirt company this week talking to them about bringing some of these lovely ideas that we have as a way to kind of make this very fun and go through, because it talks about, this whole notion of love. So you're going to hear more about that because we're working on this gift of love as well. At the very bottom of page 48, Jim, it goes back to what John was saying. God works with you, not for you, as man believes. And so, James, if you'll scroll down there to the bottom of page 48, and you'll see just where I highlighted it in yellow, this is, what John referred to as that book that Leo wrote. But it says God gives, but you must re-give equally. So John, if you can comment on that as you take us over here to page 49, and then I'm going to ask Ken to take us to page 50 and Jackie to take us to page 51.
Will do. I wanted to add something to Mr. Porter's comment. The awakening process is that mankind has got to come to know that there are no two separable things in the universe, that when he looks at another human being, he's got to know that that human being is himself, knowingly, not just kind of, in an imaginary or, a what if scenario. That other person is you. And when you know that, then your thinking will change, your actions will change, and then we will live in a balanced world.
All right. So, Ken, I'm going to ask you to add to that because you're all about application. So what does it mean? How do we take us through a regular day? How do we look at everyone and everything with that kind of love lens? Because I actually have the privilege of watching you do this quite often.
That's a great statement. John just made it very clear. To me, the application is that I found God within myself, and I must realize that same amount of God. And when I talk about God, remember I use the word ecstasy, which is exceedingly content and fulfilled. So it's a light. It's not like light from the sun. And thus, when I look at another human being's eyes are the windows to the soul. I know beyond those eyes, in that soul, is the same amount of God in them that is in me. So I see the God in people, no matter who they are. And it really feels good when someone's acting like a real numbnuts or a knucklehead, and I can still see God in them. That's when I'm in a really great place, because it's easy to see God when someone's kind and loving. And, like my lady here, God Almighty, she can do no wrong, right? But how about the average Joe, like John is saying? You must realize when you look in another human being's eyes, especially a stranger, you must realize you're looking at yourself. And the only way I can do that is to see God in them, just like I can see God in me. And that's what bridges that gap for me.
I love that. And just for the record, knucklehead is not in the home study course, but we're all bringing our own flavors here. And there you go. I often joke with the folks at the University of Science and Philosophy that we need to have a little glossary that we can look up all these different phrases. John, where else do you want us to go here on page 49 before Ken takes us to page 50?
All right, let's take a peek here. See what is paramount that we could get out here.
James can scroll in. You can see wherever you'd like us to go, John, because everyone sees the home study course differently. So part of the privilege is the fact that we all saw different things that were beautiful.
Yeah, I think the last sentence at the bottom of 49 that carries over to 50 is paramount.
Okay.
That to work knowingly with God. And that's the difference. And Dr. Russell gave a great lecture about experimentation versus knowingly working with God. And he was using Thomas Edison as an example of years and years and years of experimentation. And he said if he would just simply spend more time on his couch in silence talking to God, he would have gotten to that light bulb a little quicker. So that's the beauty of it, is that it's just, you got to have God in the equation. You can't leave God out like science does. You got to have God in the equation. And that's
gotta have the creator, the creator and the divinity in there. And that was, I know John doesn't remember telling me that, but on day one, there he was dressed to the nines in his 3-piece suit, pocket watch, like something that had been coming out of the relics of the 1920s himself. And he said to me, you cannot have a poem without a poet. You cannot have a painting without a painter. Why is it that we think we can have creation without a creator?
Oh, that's beautifully said, Kimberly.
That came from you, John.
Oh, I said that? Oh, wow. I wish I had a tie on. I'd straighten it up right now.
All right. God moments, right?
So, Ken, where do you want to go on page 50?
Well, I've got here, let us be specific. So that would be the second paragraph.
Okay.
Second indentation. Let us be specific. Let us say you want to have an apple orchard in your meadow. you desire is for wonderful apples, the best ever grown. Your metal is God's body. Note, the God's body is also God's capitalized. If you put seeds in your meadows where you desire the trees to be, God's body will extend apple trees. As John was saying, if you put the seed, you got to take the seed out of the package, put it in your hand, dig a little hole, make it not too deep, not too high, right? And so it can get the right amount of water. You have to nurture it. You have to process it. So this is what God's body will extend apple trees, and apples will come in due time, and of a quality measured by the energy that you yourself put into it, the regiving of your body to service of watering, pruning, and other expressions of love to equal the love given by God. That seed is love. We'll talk about that in a second. But the wonderful apples of your desire will come only if love given to them by you equals love given by God to them. So that seed is made with so much perfect love. Imagine now, how does a big apple tree fit in a little seed? There's God. How does a big oak tree fit in an acorn that big? It's in the seed, but there's no microscope in science. There's no telemeter that can see the seed of that oak tree, that 40-foot oak tree, or that apple full of apple, the apple tree full of apples. This story I love, and this is the one I've mentioned many times. A story is told about a farmer who desired a wonderful farm and asked God for it. Soon he found a rocky and overgrown farm and purchased it, whereupon a critical neighbor said, "You paid for a wonderful farm. If this is what God gave you, what good is prayer?" And the farmer said, "God is answering my prayer. You wait and see," the farmer said, right? And that's what Mr. Bonds was talking about, because he's going to tend that soil. This is all I could give to now to match his giving, right? So what he saved to match his giving, but he will give more when I give more. So the more I tend, the more apple trees and fresh fruits I get. The more I pick up, every rock I pick up out of dirt, the less rocks I have in my ground, right? And thus there's more room for growth. So the farmer worked knowingly and lovingly with God, and God worked with him with equal love. Year after year, God extended love from his body and the farmer from his, until the wonderful farm of his desire stood before him in all its majesty as a co-creation of God and man. 5 years later, his minister looked out over this lovely cultivated field and said, "How wonderfully God has blessed you." This is church, right? How wonderfully God has blessed you with this beautiful farm. How lovely and rich these fields are. Remember, rocks, thorns, all kinds of stuff you had to pull out. "Yes," says the farmer, "but you should have seen it when God worked it alone." Do you understand how important you are? Every one of us are. Imagine God works alone. You got rocks and thorns and seed, but when you work with God, you become co-creator and you create magic wherever you go. Just desire God to be with you. It is a practice. It takes a cognitive practice, right? At first I practice it here. As soon as I do it in the frontal cortex enough, it goes to midbrain. Now I start to feel it. As soon as it goes to midbrain, it goes to visceral brain, and now it becomes a part of who I am, part of my every movement, part of everywhere I go, and why I can walk in, as Kimberly says, I'm a pretty good, gracious guy to everybody today, because I put love into everybody that I see. I attempt to.
So what a beautiful story. And I want to have everybody star that if you have a copy of the home study course. And I'm going to ask Jackie for whatever else she wants to comment here on page 51. But before she does, I want to just have everybody really think about themselves as a co-creator. James will place there in the title, you are a co-creator. And
you are the co-creator.
You are the co-creator, because that to me is where the potential of humanity has been lost, is that we tend to think that it's outside of ourselves when in fact it's inside. And that was truly one of the things that inspired me so much when I first walked into the museum and I saw what Walter Russell created as a co-creator with the divine. And that was deeply, deeply inspiring for me. Jackie, where else do you want to bring us on page 51 before?
Well, the whole law of equal giving for regiving. It's an absolute
going down to the bottom.
law. In the middle there, yeah.
All right, right there. Thank you. I've highlighted
equally for what is given you. An effort on your part must pay for the effort on God's part. If you stop giving, you will shut off your own supply.
Amen.
And even referencing the farmer and maybe his crops, when you plant that seed and you nurture and water and help it grow and prune it, that plant will also re-give of itself that which has been given to nurture our bodies, through food, to nurture the insects and any other animals that would eat, and then the animals would give what they have to give. If it's a cow, it would give its fertilizer, and it would give its the building of their system. I don't want to get into that because there's some vegetarians or supplies in meat, and so just the giving keeps giving, and without the sun, without the rain, the water, the forest would vanish and sometimes catch fire.
So I want to add to that, Jackie, because I think that's really profound, and I'd like people to slow down, because what I've watched is a lot of people since COVID have really kind of buttoned down the hatch, and they have really kind of came in and just really stopped giving to the world because of fear. And I believe that for many of us right now, it's an invitation for us to walk past the fear, to open back up to love, and to intentionally be that co-creator. And ask yourself, if you feel like life has come to a screeching halt or a very slow crawl for yourself, is it possible that you're cutting off your own supply? So just something for us to think about as we're going through this, because there's a great deal of wisdom here. And Jim, I asked you where you wanted to take us over here on page 52 as we continue the conversations, because I have some pretty important things I'd like to say on page 53.
Okay. I'm sorry I missed you asking for that, but I will give it a quick.
Okay. That is okay. I can bring some things up if you'd like and ask you if you'd like me to, Jim.
Sure.
So for those of you that know, we do a lot of typing back and forth to each other as we're preparing for this, and it's just a lot of things to look at. So if you'll scroll down a little bit there on page 52, it talks about there that the answer is talking about, God's universe is founded upon balance. One balanced condition, listen to that phrase again, balanced condition, which he divides into two equal and opposite conditions of his electric thinking. And so, Jim, I'll have James scroll up just a little bit. If you can talk a little bit about that, the equal and opposite, and that scroll where we can see more of that answer, James, that'd be great.
That's what I see as the masculine, feminine nature in all of us. The feminine wave of creation is equal to the masculine wave of creation. Not above, not below, equal. The masculine wave is equal to the feminine wave, not above, not below, equal. When the masculine wave of creation loves and accepts the feminine wave of creation as its equal, what is manifested from that balance is love. When the masculine nature represses the feminine in the feminine body and in themselves, they create imbalance, an imbalanced exchange, which is recorded in nature and will remain in nature until they either balance it in that lifetime or in 10 lifetimes down the road. Because every time they come back in the body, that unbalanced thought or action that you put into nature will return to you like a lost child until you balance it. So it's not a matter of will you evolve? It's a matter of how long will you take to learn to love equally your feminine and masculine natures.
How beautiful. Wow, that beautifully said. So T talks about co-creating as a joy and a curse. The curse is the creation of a life unfulfilled. T, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. That's the beauty of what many of us are being called to, is to step into that co-creation role. Hello, my sweet Ida from Indonesia. Glad to have you here.
I don't agree with that last statement. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Whenever I co-create, remember, God's mind is a perpetual state of ecstasy. Mr. Bonzo, he works so hard every day on his ranch when you co-create on that ranch, do you ever like feel like you're not putting love into what you're doing? When you're doing it with God? I'm not talking about when you get tired and you fall back into self. I'm talking about when you're co-creating.
Never.
That's the whole point. That's the magic.
I agree with that part, but I'm going to now, this is where I sometimes struggle a bit with my very seasoned students here on the screen. They have had the gift of having studied this 30, 40, 45, and 50 years. But for many of the rest of us that did not have this, okay, we have actually walked through the world not giving love to everything that we do because we haven't understood it. And so I want to bring that up to everybody, because when I interact with my seasoned Russell colleagues here that I have a great deal of respect and love for, I have to remind them of what it's like on the other side of the world, because there's
If I
a
could
lot
jump in here, I'm sorry, if I could jump in here for a second. I am not in disagreement with T. Is it T? It's pronounced T?
T, what's that the name is? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What they're saying, in effect, when I read that, is what Dr. Russell and Leo teach when they say that genius is self-bestowed, mediocrity is self-inflicted. So
Yes.
someone can inflict them with what would seem a curse, but in reality, that which would seem a curse becomes a lesson when it is learned, and it is a necessary point of the creative endeavor.
I regress. I regress my statement. I take it back. Okay, I shouldn't have said.
Well, and so for all of us here, we want to encourage you to keep speaking up and bringing up these perspectives, because what I found such great joy in the Russell work, and we're down to our last 10 minutes panel before we show our visual journey from Unit 1. Many of you that have joined us have seen this, but again, you're going to see it a little bit deeper. We'll give you a time to decentrate and relax into it before we have Q&A. So get those Q&As ready. But is this whole journey has been about our figuring out how do we bring this love. And so, John, you actually referred to what people say right now about this giving and regiving. How do people refer to that in today's world?
Well, it's wonderful to see it. There's examples on TV and in the public venue where people say to pay it forward. And I think that's beautiful, and that's what regiving is, and I hope all peoples can adapt that, because it's a wonderful thing, and Dr. Russell talks about it in a more profound way in his little book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, by talking about living a life triumphant. And isn't that wonderful that if you could, your first thought of the day would be, wow, what can I give to the world that is greater than which has been given to me? And boy, wouldn't that be something?
I love that. What can I give to the world? And, I actually believe that many humans, that's really what many of us actually our heart has been, but we've gotten so beat down by life. And so part of what I was so excited about with the Russell work was seeing this notion. If you'll notice with all of these students here, there's this just spark that they get very, very excited about what they want to bring to the world. And even when we got together in the 4 months of practice before we launched this particular channel, this conversation that we would have, it was a gift of love. Wouldn't you all say that?
Yes.
Absolutely. I thought you guys argued with me all the time and just told me to shut up.
And we did that in much love, Ken. Much love.
Okay.
Lovingly told him to shut up.
No, we never said that. We did
not do that.
We did not. So I want to take us to page 53, because there's a couple of nuggets there that I wanted to be sure. And then I'm going to go to, I already told Ken I was going to come to him for page 54. So page 53, it says, if you give a little service to the potato field, you will get few potatoes. Scroll on down. And then it talks about you cannot have what you do not pay for. Love given must be paid for with equal love regiven. And so if we were to think about love as almost a currency, that's what I put a big heart there, only because that's what the world is based on. We lost our way thinking of this material sensed world, but it's really about giving love. And it also talks about in that last line, it says service accepted must equal service rendered. The potatoes or wheat in the ground are still God's body. They're not yet yours until you regive equally to earn the gift by digging them out of the ground. Until you dig them out, they have not been given to you. And I wanted to go to this next question because I wanted to bring something up, and it's a practice that I've had for my entire life. It says, I see that clearly now, is what the student said, but how would you explain its application to a man in business who gives more than he is paid for or more than is expected of him, or to a genius who gives all he has with less pay than a workman, or to a great inventor like Goodyear who starved all of his life but gave untold value to the world many millions of times in excess of what he received? And so they go on to talk about that the type of man you could refer to could not give more than he has received. And so I wanted to have us go back to the full panel. And James, I'm going to ask if you would to come on screen. A practice I've had my whole life is we have this practice in the world that we only tip 10%. We only tip 15%. We only have a price that we've accepted for certain things. I have always, if I had resources, I always gave more. I believe that many of the rules that we've had in this world has been to keep humanity really pinned down. And I believe that if whatever we give would end up being regiven. And so James, I've just asked him to come off mute because I know James has watched us in this past 7 years that we've worked together, always about how do we give more to the world, James. And I know you've also been listening to this home study course, and as a young dad of 4 children, I wanted you to comment.
Well, I didn't hear the first part of the question because when I came on screen, it broke.
I was asking you about the idea of giving more than, like I've watched you the whole time that we worked together, that you've always given far more than what we've agreed to. And I've also tried to be reciprocal with you with that if we walk through the world simply giving everything we have, how powerful that could be. And so that's what I wanted to ask you to comment on.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that you've always done the same as well. And it's interesting what happens when 2 people are trying to give as much as they can. I mean, you just end up building something really wonderful. And some of it's just a compulsion. I'm not a perfectionist, but I always look at things that I create and think, okay, could I give more? And I always want to revisit something and think, what could I have done better? Even if I could just make a small change or just add a little something to it. And, I guess that's just me. It's just something natural that I think I lean into the creation of it. I lose myself in my work. I don't know if that's to use Walter Russell's terminology, decentration, but I seem to lose sense of time and just like my bodily sensation, and I just fall right into it. And then next thing I know, it's 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of my thought.
I love that. And so I just bring this up because we have been trained in this matrix, in this world, to only give so much. And I know for many of us that resources have always been difficult. And so, and please understand that that's always been an issue for me as well. What I did learn is I found a lot of people that were not charging enough for their services and who had undervalued what they brought to the world. And I think if all of us would begin to say, if I have it, how can I share it? And can you imagine what a different world it would be if we were all doing that for each other and just doing that in love? And
yeah, I want to add another point to that. So that definitely has been a struggle of mine, of asking what I feel like I deserve, or even just knowing what to ask for. But what I found is it does enable me to give more. So, the equal, the giving and the equal regiving of the things that you receive. If I don't receive enough resources, then it makes it more difficult for me to regive that. If we're talking about money, which is obvious, that's what we're talking about. It opens up the ability for me to do more work and spend more time and put more effort into it.
Love that. Love that. So Ken, I'm going to ask if you would, as you wrap up here, if you can give us a comment or two from page 54, and I'm going to ask John to do for page 55, and then we'll go to our visual journey. What would you like to bring up for page 54?
54, love. You didn't give me any notes on 54.
That's okay. I will bring it up. I've got some highlighted. So what I do is
actually, you know what? That actually worked out perfect because I'm only going to go forward and answer a question. And it was from the paragraph that I already read about that God creative process is the same as our creative process. And finishing that paragraph, which I think is more of a practical application for our 3-dimensional world. If you want to resolve issues, you have to know what the issue is. And this is what it says. If our problem is still unbalanced, you have a problem in life and it's still unbalanced, it is because you have failed to extend your balance to it. We have that balance to extend, but do not extend it. We continue the cause of our ills and then blame God for continuing their effects. In this manner, we learn our lessons of failure or success, good or ill. Life is just a lesson, as Jim was talking about. One day we will arrive. And I think that what's so important to me about that is, if I have a thinking problem, I'm imbalanced in my thinking and I'm just thinking about the past and bad memories, or I'm stuck in a thought pattern that's just not good for me. Well, the restoring balance is going to be a mental balance. If I have a bad back, which I do, or leg, or I need to lose some weight, or I want to do something, and I'm out of sync, I'm unhealthy as a result of it, I need to take a physical action to restore that balance. So there's the mental action and there's the physical action to restore balance whenever you feel imbalance. That's it.
Okay, so that's fine. That was a previous page. I'll ask John to go ahead and wrap us up here on the, now please understand, we had a great debate. There are many, many more pages in this particular lesson, and you all can certainly put in the chat box, hey, I think you guys ought to keep going, or not, but I'm going to ask John, if he would, to comment on page 55. In the second paragraph, it talks a little bit about how everything in God's nature is all good. And then I'm going to have us take a break with our visual journey before we go to Q&A.
Well, I think it's important, Kimberly, that both the first and second paragraph be covered.
Okay.
All right. And this is the state of where man is now. Yes, we're trying to work out of these misconceptions, a little bit at a time. But just let me read here. It may be difficult to change such misconceptions as sin, evil, and wickedness in general, but sin or evil do not exist. And we shall fail in our task if we cannot demonstrate to you that with conviction that God's universe expresses God's nature and that it is all good. We have lived in an evil universe long enough. Wars, fears, and hatreds have been the fruit of it. God sent a message of love into the world 2,000 years ago to prepare man's mind for the thought of love, which was then unborn in him. James, if you'll slide down next paragraph for me, please. God sent another message of love to man, of new comprehension for the express purpose of gradually ending man's barbarian days of fear and hate and transforming him into the ways of love. That is the reason for these steps in trying to unravel the great complexities of the unknowing life of material sensing to the knowing life of cosmic expression of the God nature in all the ways of man. Now, so thank God the Russells lived on Afton Mountain in that mansion, protected and out of the way, and the message went out from there. Because we know what happened to the last messenger 2,000 years ago, right? It's like, okay, Jesus, we hear what you're saying, but we don't really believe it. So, hey, go ahead and get that cross, guys, and let's take care of this guy. We don't need this message of love anymore.
All right. Well, that's certainly, well, and John, what I appreciated so much is you helped me get past one of my challenges around this notion of evil. And so as we get ready to go into this thing, is being that I had just come through working a lot with child trafficking and helping women, I was struggling with the notion of this evil and good in the world. And the Russell work has taught me that love really is the only thing there is. And I love the phrase is that we've lived in an evil universe long enough. And when we all start declaring that love is all there is, that we no longer are giving power to this other, it is our thoughts that are creating this universe, I believe that we're going to change the world. And so there's much more to go in this lesson, but we are out of time, at least for this portion of it. I'm going to ask James to play The Gift of Love that Karen created for us all. This is the visual journey of Unit 1. It is a 4-minute visual journey, and I know you've seen this over the past few weeks, but each time you're going to see something differently because your conscious is growing, your awareness is growing, and your understanding is expanding. And after that, we will stay on for approximately another 30 minutes for any Q&A. But please enjoy this gift of love from Karen Elkins, the editor of Science to Sage magazine. It makes my heart so happy every time I see that, and I'm hearing that from so many of you here in the chat box. So as we continue this, please know we're going to open it up for Q&A, and I know that T already has a question, but before we do that, I want you to know that Karen Elkins is the one who gifts us those visual journeys. She is already working on Unit 2. And when we pulled together this panel, you know that we have a very experienced panel of Russell students here on the panel. Karen, although she's been studying the Russell work for 13 years, this is her first time through the home study course, which I believe is an extra special gift for us to actually be a part of her journey. And the way she learns is to be able to bring things visually. And I think that many of you will appreciate that as well. So as we go into Q&A, what I want to invite you all is that we're inviting you on this journey with us for a year. At the very least, we want you to at least give us the summer. You're going to notice a marked difference in your ability to bring in more light and greater understanding if you will simply commit to a few months with us. But so as we go through, Miss Mary Lou, that particular video is on our YouTube channel. So please know that everything we're creating is on our YouTube channel. What the goal for all of us is to be able to bring more light to the world, and we feel that this home study course is a precious gift to do so. Now, when you are in Q&A, we want to encourage you to build relationships with us all. You can ask us about the Russell work. You can ask about experience with Leah Russell. You could ask about our individual lives, whatever it is that you'd like to ask. I'm going to start with T, and then I'm going to bring up her question, and I'm going to ask Jim and Jackie to start, and then if anybody else would like to chime in. So T says, can I give myself more love, more patience, and more understanding? Love the way you said that, T. Is loving myself the first step to loving others, or is loving others the key to loving myself? Jim?
It's both. If you look at the statement, I refer to the Bible a lot because I read it. It's love thy neighbor as thyself. It's an interactive commitment. In order to be able to fully love your neighbor, you better darn well start working on fully loving yourself. Not where you are, but what you are. You're a divine expression of divinity embodied. Give that love out to the world, and the world will give it back to you.
Jackie, anything you want to add to that?
Sometimes I feel when I'm out and about and I am not in the best spirits of loving myself, I will get love from others, and it inspires me and wakes me up. It's like, oh, I can love too. Oh yeah, I'm worthy of that. I'm worthy of that kind word. So now I've been given, even for me to be re-give that to someone else, because it opened up that place inside of me with the help from my friends. So
okay.
I think we all have issues with loving ourselves, but we see mirror reflections all the time. We just have to let it in.
Thank you. And Ken, do you want to add anything to T's question? Because that journey of self-love and the mirror of others around you has been something that we personally experienced this year.
Well, I hate to be controversial,
Please do.
but I'm going to take a shot anyway. I came from a real rough childhood, and I didn't have any parents and any family. I lived on the streets as a teenager, and I was in juvenile hall for many years of my teen years, and I lived in group homes and foster homes, and I was a ward of the court till I was 18. So this thing you call self-love and love thy neighbor is like, man, I was all about robbing my neighbor's house to see what I could get to survive on the street. The point being is that there came a time in this journey, in the spiritual journey that I've been on for many years now, where it was in fact giving love to people, understanding people, giving them room to be wrong, telling them they're right, even though I know they're wrong, because I know by proving them they're wrong is going to be more hurtful than letting them think they're right now. For me, this has been my experience, that in pouring that, and I lectured to many people, and I've lectured for many years, and it's a giving. I'm always giving. And then I realized what happened is, as I started talking about, as I started loving myself, the same way I was giving love, as Jim was talking about, to my neighbor. And so when I gave love to my neighbor, it made me feel like I was a good neighbor. When I told my neighbor he was a knucklehead, it made me kind of feel like I wasn't the greatest neighbor in the world. There's that knucklehead term. We'll define that later. But I kind of found that I love myself today because of the love that I've given to so many people, because I am a giver today. I'm not a taker. And I used to be a taker. And that's when I started loving myself, was when I became a giver instead of a taker.
Very powerful. Very powerful. John, anything you want to add to that question?
Yes, I think what we should do here, it's just not loving yourself. You look in the mirror, but it's, what are you loving? What are you seeing?
There you go.
All right. And what you should be loving is the divine that you are. Okay. And you have to accept that. And that's a big hurdle for a lot of people, is getting over that hurdle of accepting your divinity. And remember what Leo said, the greatest challenge for any human being is to accept their divinity, then live it. So when you can accept your divinity, you can love yourself, then that gives you the capacity to love others.
Okay, so I'd like to add to that, and for the rest of anyone who's listening, feel free to add more questions to the chat box. So I, coming from a traditional faith, was taught that we're incredibly unworthy, and that we were always one step away from hell, and all the things that I was taught in the dogma. And so this notion of actually thinking that I was divinity, that was a big challenge for me, because I'd look in the mirror and say, how can you be divine when you messed life up so badly? So I'm bringing this up because I think that's part of the freedom, the shackles that are being released from humanity through the Russell work, because I think that's incredibly powerful. And I often joke with John and Jim and them to say, listen, you guys got to have this for all these years. Some of the rest of us have been tied up all these years. And so, John's making a sweet comment. It's going to make me cry. So Ken, you said you wanted to add another comment?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to let you know how I discovered it. And John just said it. You see, what used to be in my head and in my thought life, my mind, was me. And therefore, it wasn't even my mind. I was stuck in my brain. But when I started to build a relationship, as Jim said, with my creator, with divine, with creation, and what I call God today, understood by me, I started to ask God to help me see you in a different light, to help me not be so jumpy, so moody. And so therefore I started this inner dialogue with God. That's what this home study course does. It starts an inner dialogue with God. I am using my brain to talk to God, but I'm seeking God in the mind of God. But what also, I live in a three-dimensional world. So while I'm washing my car, I can wash it with God. And the more things I did with God, the more that I could see God and talk with God in my life. As John said, when I went and looked in the mirror, I didn't see Ken anymore. I saw a divine mind in application. That's what I saw. And therefore, that's how I saw it. It was in the mirror when I realized I'm talking to God all the time. And then look in the mirror and I don't see an ugly guy or an insecure guy anymore. I see a divine man.
Wow. How powerful. So I'm going to go to Bonnie's question next. Jackie, you wanted to add to that?
No, I said that's incredible to get to that point.
It is incredible. And I have to tell you, as for me, I've experienced in this reality a complete assault on the feminine, where it's harder to look in the mirror and see some of that. And so this is the difference between what happens to the masculine and feminine. There's a considerable amount of healing that's going on, I think, on both sides of it. So for Ken to be able to say that out loud, I think is quite profound. Not that I'm biased in any way.
No, that wasn't a bias.
We aren't either.
So, Bonnie, we want to bring up your question, your comment there. Bonnie said, was kind of wondering if Walter Russell was given an extra dose of light or awareness. I have lovingly slogged through this information. And as I understand my genius, Walters is knocking my socks off. John, you want to chime in?
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad Bonnie is allowing herself to become reawakened. You got to remember, Walter Russell being illumined every 7 years of his life, and then at the age of 49 having his grand illumination. Try to imagine what you feel. Ken talks about ecstasy, and just talk about, for just a split second, God gives you a shot of inspiration, and you're ready to go. Can you imagine 39 days and nights in the ecstasy of mind? But keep in perspective. And I think this is one of my most beautiful things about the Iliad, when God said to Walter Russell, "What I have given thee is but a thimble of your oceans." And to try to put that into perspective. So when you see the wealth of Walter Russell's work, and to know that he only got a thimble. But that's beautiful, because it allows us to see what is to come, what there is to be behind the veil.
Okay, so I'm going to have James pull up a picture of Walter Russell in just a moment. And remember that this work isn't about idolizing either Walter or Leo, his wife Leo. It's about using their life as a shining light, is really what I would say. Jim, would you?
And I want to just say one thing, if I don't mind, to Bonnie, to that I've been studying this, Bonnie, pretty in depth for 30 years, and I feel the same way. And I think we all should. And it's not that I feel intimidated by Walter. I'm inspired, because Walter Russell has said, and as you read through the writings so many times, there is nothing that I've done or I am doing that you yourself cannot do and cannot have done. Nothing.
May I jump in here?
You guys said that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right,
Leo
Dan?
said that. Leo said that to us often. I literally asked her the question. I asked her that question in many ways on many occasions, and the answer was always pretty much the same. We are not above you, but in knowledge of the light that lies within you. We see more of the light that lies before you, because we have transgressed the ground that you are walking. We are like every great messenger, pointing the way for those that want to follow to the light. But we will not come down the mountain and take your hand and walk you up. You must make that journey yourself. So look at yourself in the mirror. Look at your age. Look at your scars. Look at the hurts that are buried deep within. Look at the people that brought those hurts into your life. And instead of seeing them delivering hurts, imagine the hurt that was put upon them that made them that way. Go inside of that child that they once were, and hold that child and love that child for the hurt that they're receiving from people that don't know. And when you can embrace the child within your enemy, then you will have no problem embracing the child within you and loving it.
All right. So what a beautiful comment, Bonnie, and generated quite a bit of discussion. As we're getting into the last bit of our broadcast here is our conversation with all of us. Anyone else who wants to ask any questions, we're not going to force it to last. I do notice that there's been a lot of comments there. And what I believe, John, I would like to bring up to everybody, part of what inspired me when I walked into the museum and I learned of the work, and I learned of the University of Science and Philosophy and how long you had dedicated your life to supporting this work, is the fact that we talked about how, now looking back, there had been some kind of a solar event back in 1921. There was actually a presentation about that at some point. And that now, with more light pouring in, is it possible that more and more people are going to wake up to more and more of their divinity and be wondering what's happening?
Oh, I'm sure. And, it's, but the journey, remember this. The journey up the mountain, the further up you go, the more lonely it becomes. Mm-hmm. But you're never really alone, because the further up the mountain you go, the more you become aware of your creator. So just keep that in mind.
All right. Quite profound. I do not see any other comments in the chat box or questions. So I'm just going to ask the panel if there's any final word that you would like to share with everybody here today as we wrap up.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I have seen an incredible jump and shift in people's consciousness and wanting to just come out with the knowledge that they've received, even if it's just, they're making up their own statements and inspiring quotes that from them, they come from themselves. And to me, that is their genius being expressed. And I commend that, and it inspires me to do the same in whatever avenue I choose. So I see it.
I love that, Jackie. I love that. I'm going to ask the others for a comment, but I do want to respond to what Frank said. Frank said, what is the significance of the 7-year illumination cycle? So I had commented in the chat box, John, about the fact that Walter Russell had illuminations throughout his life. Can you answer that question for Frank?
Well, I don't think that there's a significance to the number 7.
Except there's a new generation every 7 years.
I mean, there could be, but I wouldn't overemphasize it. It just happened. But what ties it together for me is that it was either on or near Dr. Russell's birthday that all of his illuminations took place. So, but yeah, coincidence or whatever. But that's just basically how it unfolded.
I tend to, our bodies, right? I just learned this. I think Jackie taught me this. That regenerate the cells of our body every 7 years. And Walt Disney was the releases, the Disney movies, if you look at it, they're released every 7 years. And the reason behind his thinking was that every 7 years is a new generation. We're now of the electric age, so it seems like every 2 years things are changing rapidly. But in principle, as a physical form, if you do 7 times 7 times 7 times 7s, and you think of those periods of your life, right? 7, you think of that age. You think of 14, you're in your teens, you're awkward. Think of 21, you think you got the world. Think of 28, you realize, oh my God, how the hell am I going to get this done? Think of 36, and you're like, oh, things are good again. Think of 42, oh my God, I'm going downhill. 49, though, you're at your peak. Like, man, I'm spiritually, I'm physically still in good shape. I'm mentally still in good shape. And so I think that 7-year thing had something to do with it. I think John's correct, though. Don't get caught up in it like, ooh, okay, I just tracked this every 7 years. I have not noticed that in my life. I just have contemplated that 7-year concept, though, before.
I would encourage everyone who's asked that question to spend time in meditation and ask your divine self inside, capital S, for an answer to that, and it will be revealed to you. It will be revealed to you. All right. Final comments. As we wrap up, final comment, Ken, and then I'm going to John.
I got one. I got a question for the crew. Mr. So let's say, and I know, for instance, there's somebody that I invited on here that said that they feel that they've fallen off of their God communication receptor, right? Their inner dialogue with God has gone. It takes exertion now. As before, it seemed like as they practiced it, they got better and better and stronger and stronger. Now they feel they've gone through work and done a lot of things in this 3D world, and that communication has gotten thinner and thinner, and it requires strain for them to access more of that feeling of that connection. What do you say to someone if they've been on a path for 10, 15, 20, 40 years, doesn't really matter. And then they kind of stop doing their meditation, their practices, and their reading, and they hit a lull, right? How do you bring them back up? What do you say to them?
You tell them to pick up a book and start reading and get re-inspired. You got to start somewhere. Or maybe it's a beautiful piece of music. Okay, or maybe it's a good walk in the woods. Speaking to nature is always a good rebound.
I love it. That's a great answers. But like, what if you're beating yourself up over it, right? Like, gosh, had so much going on. I was so connected, and now I don't feel as connected. and you have, you know what I mean? How do you keep that voice from, the term that I've heard is don't think too ill of yourself. Nobody's perfect. But John said it exactly what I've heard the answer to be. Resume your practices and it will all come and even greater than before. You won't go back. You'll actually go forward. So
And
thanks,
once you've been partially on the up the path to the mountaintop and you've obtained a higher level and you find that you have stepped down from that path, it's far easier to go where you've already been than to go where you haven't been.
You've said that to me before, Jim. That's right. That's right. The second time is always easier than the first time. That's good. Good stuff, guys. Thank you.
And once
All right.
again, we are the ones. We are the ones that fall away. God is always there. So you can always just turn that dial and tune right in.
Ken, I have something for you. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
There's the light.
Let there be
All
light,
right.
Ken.
A little cosmic humor here as we're wrapping up here, wrapping up for the day. We want to say a gracious thank you to everyone. Welcome. We're welcome to this time, this journey with us. We're so happy to have you on board. Please share it with others. And then I know that many of you may not have others to actually share it with, but that may be why you're on here. So may we just all collectively just continue to grow this path. Please be sure to check out the Awaken Your Inner Genius link below. If you have a chance, get your copy of the home study course. Please share with others that we're here every Sunday night at 7 p.m. We cannot, yes, final thought, Ken.
Hi, Bruno. I just want to say hi, Bruno. I couldn't get in the chat, but he said hi to me. So hi, Bruno.
All right. So sending love to everybody. James is going to wrap us up with a little bit of music, and we will see you next Sunday. Thank you so much, everyone. Much love to you all.
Bye.